Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this afternoon. No slides from me today. I'm just going to talk. So hopefully, I'll talk slowly so the translators can hopefully get everything across. Firstly, I would like to thank Luciana and everyone at Rio Music Buzz for their hospitality over the last few days and presenting such a great event in such a beautiful city, despite the rain, but the sun's back now, so thank you for that. I'd also like to thank Charles Coulter, the head of Merlin, who unfortunately could not attend the event this year. Charles asked me to present in his absence. As many of you may know, but for the benefit of those that don't, Merlin is the global digital rights agency for the world's independent label community. It is not, as some think, an aggregator or a distributor. Merlin's remit is to ensure independent record labels and distributors have a vehicle to protect and enhance their ability to compete in the rapidly evolving and changing world of digital music. Acting collectively on behalf of its members, Merlin provides independent labels with effective access to new and emerging digital revenue streams, negotiating deals on their collective behalf. And for digital services such as Spotify and audio, for example, Merlin offers significant efficiencies, a global license via a single deal. Instead of hundreds of individual local deals, these services can now access some of the world's leading independent labels with just one global deal. Merlin membership currently stands at over 650 members, representing more than 20,000 independent labels and distributors from over 40 countries. So, who can join? Membership is open to any company owning or controlling rights in master recordings with an annual share of the global market for recorded music of less than 5%. Except any company which is owned in whole or in part or controlled by a non-qualifying company. Generally speaking, that means any company that is not 50% or more owned by a major label. Since its formation in 2007, Merlin has successfully concluded deals with Spotify, Deezer, Audio, Google Play, Pandora, SoundCloud, YouTube, and many others, in addition to settling lawsuits with SiriusXM, Grooveshark, and LimeWire. Today, I'm going to speak about my experience as a Merlin member, and more recently as a member of the Merlin board, and provide a review of the 2015 Merlin membership survey. But let's start with a little bit about me, and some of this may be a little controversial, what I'm about to say, but I think it's something that needs to be said and something that's very important. I used to work at IOTA, the Independent Online Distribution Alliance, who some of you may recall. IOTA was a digital distributor based in the States. We were one of the first, a pioneer in the space, providing royalty and deal transparency and technology efficiencies, and we were pretty damn good at what we did. We worked with many Brazilian and South American labels, some of you who are probably here this afternoon. We believed it was important to provide a platform, an opportunity for independent labels from all markets, not just America and Europe, to have an equal opportunity in the global digital space. It is what digital had always promised, a truly democratic and global playing field for everyone, big or small. But now let's rewind the clock, 2009, which seems like a lifetime away in the digital space. In that time, we've seen digital companies come and go. We've seen the growth of YouTube and Spotify, the arrival of Apple Music, the monetization of SoundCloud, and much more besides. In 2009, the digital distribution market was becoming crowded, and new players were pushing down the cost of entry, which was not a bad thing. It was actually a very, very good thing. Artists were benefiting. It had become a wonderfully competitive and invigorating space. But as with any new market shift, any disruption to an industry, the inevitable happened, consolidation. Many, many companies pursued IOTA, including all of the majors, and eventually Sony acquired us in a deal that seemed quite fantastic at the time, fantastic for everybody, an opportunity to help independents grow globally, or so we believed. We saw it as an opportunity to access major label digital deals, which we all assumed to be better than the ones independents could negotiate on their own. A few years earlier, we knew iTunes paid the majors 70 cents, US 70 cents, and the independents 65 US cents per track. We knew that the majors had better deals. By the way, that iTunes disparity was corrected just 6 weeks after the formation of A2IM, the American independent label trade body, similar to your ABMI, proving the power of a collective independent voice. And indeed, in certain cases with those digital deals, we were right. The majors did have better deals. In some cases, their royalty rates were 20% better. But after the Sony deal, we were no longer allowed to show our digital service deals to our labels. Our belief in transparency, allowing labels to see the deals, to know exactly what rate we, or Sony for that matter, had negotiated, our very DNA, was no longer allowed. In the Sony world, the window of transparency had closed. And we truly believed they wanted to support third-party independent distribution. In fact, they told us they did. They sold us on that. But we were wrong, very, very wrong. What they actually believed in and wanted from the acquisition was market share. On the very first day of being owned by Sony, the distributed labels identifier, that little set of characters that identifies a label in SoundScan, the service that provides sales data to Billboard in the United States, was switched to say IOTA. IOTA now sat underneath Sony's market share, and suddenly Sony's market share shot up. It went through the roof. IOTA had something like 8% of the US digital market. Buying market share, what a brilliant move by Sony. But let's get some clarification, understanding, and context what market share is and what it really means. I had always thought it was just big companies competing for so-called bragging rights, to be able to say, my ball is bigger than your ball. That is partly true, and yes, they often need to impress Wall Street. But there is something else, something that has a very deep and profound effect on independent labels and their value in the marketplace. If you are a label owner that owns master recordings, then you, the label, and only you, the label, has the right to those recordings and market share it generates. Sony acquired IOTA, a distributor, not the labels it distributed. It's a very, very important distinction. I subsequently learned from a Sony executive in New York, who shall remain nameless, that every 1% of market share equates to approximately $10 million the label can extract in advances and or equity from a service such as YouTube, Spotify, or one of the mobile operators. Those are very big numbers when you control 20 to 30% of the market. I quite quickly did the numbers for IOTA and saw that our market share, or rather the false market share that Sony was trying to own, was likely to be worth a lot more than the amount Sony paid for the acquisition. It was quite an eye-opener. And although they do provide a valuable service to independent labels, we now see ADA, RED, and Caroline, the major owned distributors in the States, doing much the same, taking market share that isn't rightfully theirs. I soon left IOTA after that and returned to the independent community. I stood for election for the Merlin board in 2013. I now knew that Merlin, more than ever, had an important role to play, a vital and necessary role to help independents gain parity. Instead of being last in the negotiation table with digital services, as we often had been, it was now time we were at the table on day one. True market share is measured by those that own their master recordings and not by those that distribute them. For example, Taylor Swift, one of the biggest and best-selling artists in the world, whose catalog is owned by Big Machine Records, is distributed by Universal. Her market share should be part of the independents' market share. According to new statistics from Billboard, the independents took 35.4% of the US market by ownership in the first half of 2015. That is ahead of Universal at 27.6%, Sony at 20.9%, and Warner at 15.2%, and represents an increase on the 35.1% share the markets claimed across the whole of 2014. In just a few years, we have seen Merlin go from strength to strength. The YouTube negotiation with Google, for example, which I'm sure many of you read about, and even though not directly involved in the negotiation with Apple Music, the power of a collective independent voice forcing the hand of Apple, which we'll let Taylor Swift take the credit for. Merlin now generates over $140 million US a year for independents, and Brazil represents almost 1% of that revenue, which is growing. And Brazil is an important market, both for domestic and international repertoire, and there is nothing more enjoyable than seeing Brazilian music being available globally in all territories, something that was clearly not possible in the age of the physical CD. But we also want to see that 1% grow, to help the services and labels here in Brazil, help them grow and compete on the world stage. This year, Merlin surveyed its 650 plus global members in detail about A, changes to their digital business from year-end 2013 to year-end 2014, and B, current developments in the digital market. 82% of Merlin members responded that they were positive about the future. This is clearly not the market in crisis that is being painted by the Recording Industry Association of America, the body that for the most part represents the major labels. Only 6%, that's only 6% of Merlin members were not optimistic. And the majority of Merlin members reported overall business growth. The survey says that we are at a tipping point in the digital market. There are two indisputable facts. One, by nature, independent labels and independent artists have been early digital adopters, and as have fans of independent music. Number two, the digital market is good for independents. New stores have opened up possibilities and created success, and independents are riding high. Combining these two facts with the events surrounding Apple Music's launch, and as I said, last year's battle with YouTube, brings us to the dawn of a new era, when independents go from the periphery of the market to the very center of it. Here are some more numbers from the survey. Despite a market in transition and a drop in a la carte download sales, that's iTunes downloads for example, 65% of respondents reported an increase in overall business revenues in 2014, compared to 62% in 2013. However, a la carte download revenues did increase for 44% of respondents, although 36% reported a decrease. 16% of respondents reported a decrease in overall revenues, compared to 18% in 2013. 44% reported a 50% plus increase in audio streaming and subscription revenues, largely driven by Spotify and YouTube. Streaming and subscription revenue is clearly driving digital growth. 1 in 3 respondents reported that income from audio streaming and subscription services currently represents over 50% of their digital revenue, up from 1 in 5 in 2014. Similarly, last year, almost half of the respondents stated that streaming and subscriptions accounted for less than 25% of their digital revenue. In 2015, this was only the case for a quarter of respondents. So overall, total digital revenues increased for almost 75% of respondents, and 17% reported total digital revenues increased by over 50%. Charles Coulter has been quoted as saying, I'm going to quote directly, "The Merlin membership survey again shows how strongly the world's leading independent labels are faring in the global digital market. This year's results highlight the speed at which music fans are transitioning towards streaming and subscription services, and how independent labels are leading that charge and growing their audience in the process, with the vast majority growing their digital revenues and expanding their business overall." In addition to the membership survey, Merlin also prepared an analysis of its own internal data, highlighting year-on-year changes in usage and revenues. Comparing usage in the month of March 2015 with March 2014, the volume of audio streams reported to Merlin by leading music services increased by 67%. In March 15 alone, audio tracks by Merlin's members were streamed more than 2.5 billion times, up from 1.4 billion in April 2014. Year on year, 2013-14 to 2014-15, revenues reported to Merlin by leading music services increased by 43% to get us that $140 million number that I just mentioned. Drawing on an analysis of over 9 billion audio streams from January to April 2015, usage of Merlin members' repertoire on audio streaming and subscription services was 35% higher on paid streaming tiers compared to free ad-funded tiers, which is very, very good news for everyone. But with all the good news, there are still challenges. Just 1% of the world's population currently pays for streaming services, as this was reported today in Music Business Worldwide. That's approximately 41 million people paying for a subscription service. We have a duty to help improve connectivity around the world and to make access easier and more seamless. We are fighting the word free. We are still fighting the word free, but we can win. Not by devaluing music, not by giving it away, but by making it easier and simpler to access. The recorded market has also consolidated significantly in that time. While once we talked about the big six, there are now only 3 major labels. And as demonstrated earlier, they continue to attempt to inflate their market share by buying into independent distribution to leverage value away from the labels that deserve to benefit, and construct controls around what is still an emerging market. And then there are the services themselves, buying into this very antiquated worldview and constructing their services accordingly. But the clock can't be turned back. This is a very new market. The upshot is that while digital innovation has leveled the playing field for independent labels, vastly increasing the possibilities to reach fans and distribute music. But consolidation has meant that, certainly in the first half of the last decade, independents have been treated very, very poorly. Steve Jobs from Apple said in 2003, when speaking about the launch of iTunes, "We've had to put most of them," that's the independent labels, "off until after launch, just because the major big five have most of the music, and we only had so many hours in the day. But now we're really going to have to give time and focus to a lot of these independents, and that will be really great." So now really is the time for independents to take control. With what we've achieved with Apple, we've shown ourselves to be capable of shaping the future and earn the right to be the fourth voice at the table from the outset. After Apple and YouTube, any service building its offering without us should take heed. Much as the majors like to brainwash the market with disingenuous statistics and paint a picture where they are all that truly matters, it's time to make it absolutely clear that the market cannot buy into this view. We are no longer at the periphery, no longer an afterthought. We are the future of the industry, front and center, attracting consumers to paid services and playing a central role in driving value back to the market. Merlin is a great symbol of what the new market looks like, global in outlook, transparent, and passing all benefits back to its members. Merlin is called not-for-profit, but they are for the profit of the companies they represent, profits they deserve, profits that they do not fully access via major labels, profits that the major labels can no longer sweep under the market share carpet. If you're with a major label in any way whatsoever as an artist or a label, you should ask what happens to the breakage, advances, and equity stakes they have in digital services. Does that go back to the artist? It is our duty to talk about these issues so that change happens. In 2014, WIN, the World Independent Network, launched a major new initiative called the Fair Digital Deal Declaration. The Fair Digital Deal Declaration is a statement of commitment made by independent record labels to treat their artists fairly in agreements relating to digital exploitation of their work in recorded music agreements with third parties. This declaration has now been signed by over 1,000 independent labels from around the world. We, the independents, represent the most valuable set of rights outside of the three majors. Surely that is not difficult to comprehend. Independents globally have shown that by organizing ourselves better, things have changed immeasurably. We have taken great strides, and I personally, as a board member as a member of Merlin and a board member, proud that Merlin has played an instrumental role in that change. We now know what the future looks like, but now it's up to those constructing the digital services as well. Thank you. Does anyone have a question?
Hi, Bill Coulter, Music Reports, over here. Hey. Too many lights, right?
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
Does Merlin have a specific position on the direct payment of artists' rights as opposed to pooled reporting?
Can you say it again, Bill?
Does Merlin, as an organization, have a position on whether pooled reporting is superior to direct reporting?
Are you referring to things like the deal with Pandora, for example?
No, this is the issue that was missed in the panel that was supposed to be addressed to earlier yesterday or the day before. I can't remember which. Whether the payment by a specific subscriber to a digital music service should be accounted directly to the artists that that user listens to, or whether the pool of royalties should be divided pro rata.
I'm not going to give you what Merlin's position is on it, as only being a board member rather than being a representative of Merlin, but I'll give you my own personal opinion on it. I truly believe that the economics of subscription service needs to change. And I think, and there are certainly some voices out there who are trying to change it, or trying to push for that change. And I think it'd be quite interesting if a new service came into the market and made that change. So if, for example, you are a subscriber and you only play one artist, and that's all you ever play for months on end, then that money should, rather than go to the pool, should actually go to benefit that artist. If that economic structure of a subscription service can change, I think that would be fantastic, because it will benefit developing artists, and it will support smaller independent labels as well, and not rather than have a big pool of money which benefits primarily those with market share, i.e. the major labels. Thank you.